friends. I've got a great new class for all of us. I'm really excited for us to get started in this special offering of crochet. Now, we're targeting specifically for kids, but if you're a beginner, this is great for you too. We're just going to do some fun projects together. We're going to learn a stitch each time we get together, and we're going to do something with that stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to flip over so you can see what I'm doing, and let's make some things together. All right, so let's talk supplies first. So we're crocheting, right? So we're going to need some crochet needles. Now I've got a couple here because of the projects that we're going to talk about today. This one is a big hook, and it's called a J. It also has the number 10 on it. Get it close to the camera and see if we can see that. There. And it says 6 millimeter. So I'm not sure what your hook might say, but if it says any of those, that's great. You might want to use a G or an H, and that's fine too. I brought a J because it's big, and so it's easier to see on the camera when we're starting to learn this. But I also brought this really small one, and it may really be hard to see the information on it. But this is an E, and it has the number 4, and then it says 3.5 millimeter. And I brought this one because we're going to do some things with beads. If you see my bracelet here, I made a friendship bracelet, and I used beads. And we need a small one because we need to be able to go inside that bead. Our big one wouldn't go in there. Okay, so we need crochet hooks, a pair of scissors because you're going to need to cut your yarn, and then that's all you need really to crochet, that plus your yarn, right? But we're going to do a special project. I've got a couple of things out here for you to see. I've got this fun little, I'm going to call it like a window hanging sun catcher, and the reason why I say that is because I've got some beads in here that are a bit transparent. And so the sun could catch in that and shine and just be really pretty. Or you could just hang something on your wall with yarn and some crochet some beads. You can have all kinds of fun with it. We're also going to work on making a friendship bracelet. So I've got my beads here. I've got some charms here. These are both from the Creatology line at Michael's. I got the one that has all the different colors of beads. It also has some letter beads. I really like this variety pack right here. All right, so those are my extra things for the extra projects. And then a fun stick from the backyard, because why not? It was free, right? So let's talk about how we start with crochet. And I'm going to move some things out of the way so we can just focus on our crocheting. So I've got my yarn here, and I just balled it up, made a ball of it. You could use it straight out of the skein, and that would be okay too. And how I always like to start is by winding it on my hand. Now, the reason why we wind it on our hand is because we need to create tension, and we want just the right tension. We don't want it too tight as we're crocheting. We don't want this real tight, or we won't be able to crochet into it. And we don't want it really, really loose. So I found that this works really well to keep a nice, even tension. So here's what I do. I hold out my hand, and I cross over my pinky finger, and I come up and under my pointer finger. Okay, let's do that again. So I'm going to cross over and under my pinky, under my pointer. And then I'm going to use my middle finger and my thumb to gently hold this. I'm not holding it tight. I'm not holding anything tight on my hands. If I hold things tight, it's going to make my stitches really, really close together and really tight. Every crocheter will have their own tension. So some people will use the same needle, the same yarn, and their crochet will look different because it will be either more tight or less tight. That's all about tension. So here we go one more time. Over my pinky and under, and then under my pointer finger, Then I'm going to loosely hold it with my thumb and my middle finger. Now it's time to start what we call a slip knot. So I've got my crochet hook and I'm going to stick it right in this hole. See this hole that's been created? Not that hole, but this hole right here. I'm going to stick it down in there. And now I'm just going to turn it towards me where it's looped on to my crochet needle. Do you see that, how it's looped? Let's do that part again. I'm going to put down in the center. I'm going to point towards myself and point up. If you're a lefty, same difference. It's going to do the same thing. You're going to put it in the hole and you're going to point it to yourself. Then I'm going to take, and you see that hook right there? We're going to lean it over and come under our thread and hook. And I'm moving my fingers closer to this right to my needle. It'll make it easier. And it catches that yarn and I'm going to pull it through the hole. And this is called a slip knot. Let's do it again. So I'm going to go down in the hole, point towards myself and go up. Now I'm going to lean it over and under the yarn and pull it through my hole to create my slip knot. Now that is the first thing you're going to do about any crochet. You're going to create a slip knot. So practice that. Eventually you'll get it down to where you'll be able to quickly do a slip knot. Just like that. Boom. You'll have it wound on your hand and a slip knot. If you need to watch this again slower, then you can change the settings on your YouTube playback to watch this slower, okay? But we're going to go on and move to our first stitch. This is a stitch we're going to learn this time, and it is called the chain stitch. This is the foundation stitch for every crochet project that you do. It's going to be some sort of a chain stitch. So we've got our slip knot, and now all we do is we lean over and under that yarn, and we pull it through. Let's do it again. Go under and pull that yarn through. So we're leaning right towards it and we're just pulling it through. And I'm holding real loosely with my middle finger and my thumb, my crochet, my chain that's coming out. So as I go with this chain, I'm going to, I kind of loosen up my fingers so that yarn flows through, but I also move these fingers where I'm closer to my needle. It helps because I can kind of pull that just a little bit and then my needle goes through real easily. Okay, let's talk about it again. We've got our loop here on our crochet needle. We're going to lean over. See how I'm coming close to my finger there? I'm not going that way. I'm going this way and I'm going under and then I'm pulling it through. And you'll see my hand kind of kick out every once in a while. What I'm doing when I do that is I'm letting more yarn come off the ball. I'm like encouraging it to come off of the ball. I'm going to get it real close so you guys can see. There's our chain stitch. That is the first stitch that you'll need to learn. And you see it, it's kind of, look how elasticy it is. It stretches a bit. And you see it looks somewhat like maybe a braid on one side, and then on the back, it has this hump on it. So it's a really great stitch we can do. We're going to use this when we do our next class, and we're going to go in and make other stitches by going into these stitches that we made here with our chain. So let's talk about what we can do today with our projects. Because you can make a chain stitch, you can make really, really long chain stitch, and then you can join it back together at the beginning, and that would be just going in one of these loops and then pulling it through, and then you've made a ring, right? You can do a really, really, really long one, and you can make a necklace out of it, or you can make, I don't know, any number of things. My sister took some really, really, really thick cording and crocheted a chain stitch and made a dog leash out of it. just with this stitch, but she used a different material. She didn't use yarn because that wouldn't be strong enough. She used a really thick cording. So that's our chain stitch. Now let's talk about adding beads to our chain stitch. So I'm going to switch over to my tiny needle. And remember, I need to do this because I have to go inside these beads. So I'm going to take one of these beads. These are called pony beads. And I need to be able to go inside. So if your needle does not go inside a bead, then it's not the needle that you want to use for these projects, okay? So got it all, get my tension ready. I'm holding my project. I've changed to my smaller needle. I'm going to put it in my loop there, a little slip knot. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take that bead and I'm going to put it on right there. Do you see? I've got my loop. Now I've got a bead. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go under, I'm going to grab my yarn, and I'm bringing it through. And when I bring it through, it brings it through the bead and then through my loop. Then I can crochet another stitch. And these are going to be smaller stitches because it's a smaller needle. That does make a difference. Can you see the difference in that? See how big these are and how small these stitches are? And I can grab another bead, put it on, and again, I'm going to lean over, I'm going to come under, and I'm pulling it through, and I'm pulling it through the bead and my loop. And that's how I created these right here. And I just said, okay, I want some of them to be 7 stitches in between and some of them to be 5 stitches in between. And I just was real random, but you can say every 5 stitches, I'm going to put a bead, and you can do that. And even if you did this and you joined it together at the end, this would make a fun necklace, or you could even turn it and you'd have a double bracelet. So really fun way to do that. Another thing that you can do is you can just chain one bead right after another. So I've got a bead. Now I'm going to take another bead and I'm going to pop it on there and go ahead and pull through. And so I've got them right next to each other. Now this is what I did on my bracelet here. So let me show you making a bracelet, how I would make a bracelet. I'm going to take everything out, and that's the fun thing also about a chain stitch. If you mess up, it's easy to take it all out. You just hold your tail, hold your end with your yarn, and just pull, and it just comes right out. That's also a caution, because if you pull it when you're not ready to, it can all come apart. So I'm looping over and under my pinky, over my pointer, and now I'm holding it with my thumb and my middle finger, and I'm going to make a bracelet. Now I've already got my beads laid out here. If you're making a bracelet like this one, a friendship bracelet, you're going to want to go ahead and pick out your beads. How do you want it? Now I will tell you that for my wrist, and I'm an adult, so my wrist might be a little bit bigger than yours, I needed 22 beads. You may need fewer than 22 beads. So you'll just need to measure around once, make one. See how it works. You may need to take a bead or 2 out. So I always have some different, just solid color beads at the end, in and amongst all the letters. So there's my letters. This is for a friend of mine, and she has 2 little boys, and I wanted to make her a bracelet that she could wear, and these are her boys' favorite colors too. So that's how I came up with this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by going in, making that slip knot, coming towards myself and pointing up, going under and catching the yarn and pulling it through. Now, one thing I want to be really careful of when I'm doing this is I just want to be real loose. If you're not real loose, then one side will be tight and it'll want to pucker up like this, where part of it's like bowing out. All right, so I've got my slip knot, and I'm going to immediately start and take a bead and attach it. So I put the bead on my crochet hook, and now I'm going to pull that yarn right through, and I'm going to take another bead. I'm pulling up a little bit of yarn so that I have some loose tension there. Underneath, grab that yarn, pull it through, and I'm going to keep going. I've got my letter beads. I will tell you that the letter beads are a little bit, the hole is a bit smaller than the pony bead. So if your needle fits through the pony bead, but it doesn't fit through the letter bead, then you may want to go for a smaller crochet needle. Grab it, pull it through. Grab my next letter. Now, when you make friendship bracelets with the letter beads, it looks different because the letters are actually like this on your wrist. But when you crochet it and you include the letters like I've done here, your letters are vertical rather than horizontal. So what's interesting about it is they turn and they're still going to be the same way. So let's grab another letter. We're just going to keep going and putting our letters on. And if you need to slow this down, please remember that you can do it. You can pause the video. You can go back and watch another part. But I'm just going to get to the end of this project so I can show you how to finish it off. So I'm just putting that bead on there, pulling my yarn through, and checking. Did you see that I checked it? I was like, how are we doing? Now that heart, you see how it spells Oliver kind of backwards, but here it spells it the right way. I want to make sure my heart is going to show the right way and not be upside down. I think we're good. Through. So yeah, my heart is in the right direction. Keep going. Now I'm going to do Cooper's favorite color. Grab that yarn, pull it through. Now, if you make a mistake on this, it's okay. You can easily undo it and start over again. And you know what the best thing about starting over again is? We've learned something. Every time you have the opportunity to start over, you have learned something the time before, and you get to do it with what you've learned. So if I were to make this and I realize, oh, this is really tight on this, and I like, okay, I'm going to undo it. I've learned, oh, okay, it was really tight. I need to be really careful to be loose with this stitch right here. And I learned something and I can do it again. When I was creating these bracelets, I created about 4 or 5 different types, undid them, redid them, undid them, redid them, until I came up with something that I was really happy with. And it was okay, because as I did it, I was learning. Every time I undid and redid, I was learning something, and that's okay. All right, I'm at the end of my 22 beads. Got everything on there, but it doesn't look like a bracelet yet. I'm going to come back around to my very first one. I'm going to bring it right up here, and I'm going to take my needle and slip it through that bead. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull that yarn through the bead, but this time I'm going to go ahead and pull it through this loop as well. And I want to pull out a good tail. It's always good to give yourself a good tail. I would say, at least 3 inches of a tail is good. I'm going to snip right there. Do you see where I'm snipping? And now I can take my yarn from my ball, pull it through, and I have my bracelet. Let's tie it off just with a regular knot. It's perfectly fine. Tie a knot. I'm going to do that 3 times because I want to make sure it's really secure. Now I have the bracelet. It has a tail. If you want to leave it with a tail, that's perfectly fine. But if you don't want to, I do not recommend cutting it right here. I would recommend taking and putting your needle through one of the beads, looping that yarn, and coming through. And maybe doing this just a couple of times. And you can cut it there. If it comes undone, you can, cut it tighter. Or like I said, you can always just leave the tail. That's completely up to you. I personally like not having the tail. So I would pull it through a couple of beads. And then I would just take and give it a snip. Careful only to snip my tail. And then you've got bracelet, and it'll stretch a little bit and slip right on. There we go. So what we learned today is we learned how to do the slip knot to get the yarn on your crochet needle. We learned how to do the chain stitch, which is this stitch right here, the foundation for all crochet. And we learned how to put beads on our crocheted project here. So we want to use this if we want to make decorations or necklaces or bracelets or whatever your imagination can come up with. You can do that with the chain stitch as our foundation stitch. Now next time we're going to start with our chain stitch, and we're going to make the next stitch, which is going to be our single crochet. So I'm looking forward to having you guys back for next time as we work on our next project. And I love to see your projects and hear about what you're making. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining.